could be able to react to consumer conversation in real time in the way that a newsroom could. And so we kind of stepped back and said, okay, what would it look like if we started with data visualizations of real-time conversation. Okay, that's interesting, but what does it really take? And a lot of people ask, like, who owns social media? And so one of the things we tried to tackle was it's not really about ownership, it's about leadership. So how can we lead in the forefront? What are the right functions that are necessary to be around the table? So then we said, okay, what does it look like to restructure the culture? And so then we said we need somebody from insights, we need somebody from PR, from CR, from media, so on and so forth. And so then we put 5 people, and all of a sudden we started building this room. And then we said, okay, imagine if it was glass. In those data visualizations, we're able to bring the information out in a digestible way so that everybody, and it's a glass room that sits in the middle of the marketing floor, which is crucial because every single person now in that marketing department is able to digest real-time consumer conversation. And it's really, first of all, I think that, and this is not because we did it, but I actually think that this will be the future of real-time marketing. Because when you stand in the middle of mission control, it's like looking at your customer for the first of all, it's the largest unaided customer group that we've ever had access to. Why wouldn't we take advantage of it? But it's like standing in the middle of your customer and watching them talk to you. And what's amazing is if you're doing it, well, we have no marketing or communications in the marketplace. You're seeing what they're talking about and how they care about your product, training, all those kind of things. And then forget about it. Imagine if you're on the sideline of Super Bowl, the conversation that erupts. It's just pretty amazing. And what's even more amazing is the cultural transformation. That was so important for us. How do we bring cultural transformation? That it's done so everybody from supply chain to sales to vending, so on and so forth, are now thinking about what the customer is saying in real time. And so
just on that, the mission control is it's like a milestone. It's from now on, this is important to us. And I think that's the thing that we've seen. We've seen a lot of companies, since you guys launched that, want to talk to us and say, well, we'd like to do our own version of mission control.
I know, imitation, flattering, that's how I look at it. I love it.
I mean, Dell has done their command center. We've seen other companies put together ones as well. And it's kind of this, it's a focus. It's really bringing focus to it. Now, at the same time, you mentioned, it's in the glass, so other marketers can see this. How is it also, affected? It's not just those folks listening. I mean, there are other folks listening in it, but it's kind of this kind of figure. It's a place to say that's what we're doing, and it's important. So, how is it working throughout the rest of the organization?
It's odd because in hindsight, I wish there wasn't glass. I wish it was open. But so what it's done was it's provided. So the 2 pillars were real-time insights, real-time participation. How can we use these insights, to affect day-to-day conversations that we have with our consumers and our community, but also how can we see product insights happening well before they actually affect our business. So that was the goal. And so there are reports that are now generated and shared throughout the Gatorade organization that are generated from Mission Control. Anybody across the entire organization can ask Mission Control a question. So a lot of times, people from across the org are like, okay, well, how are people feeling about action sports and Gatorade? Can you find out what the community is saying about that? Or what about pregame rituals? Or what about, and now we even have our Gatorade Sports Science Institute, which are the scientists that created Gatorade 60 years ago, are now a part of the room, and they're participating in real-time training with consumers and learning, how consumers are changing their behavior around hydration or consumption during games. So it's turned into kind of the centerpiece for insights as well as the centerpiece for real-time communication, and that's being shared across the organization. What's so awesome is that the CMO of Gatorade, she's brilliant, Sarah Rabohagen, she's so brilliant, but she has now made that a focal point for every single one of the customer teams to participate and engage. So, it's been taken from the whole. But what's even more interesting is that we're now launching Mission Control in a box, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need a physical room, right? So it's what's the concepts that we're focused on that we can share across the organization. So that's kind of the replication in some respects across the organization. Although I like the rooms.
Yeah. It's related to a conversation that I was having about a couple hours ago out in the hallway. And it was around this kind of focus that companies would have, agencies, companies, where let's pick an agency. Traditional agencies have been focused around, or maybe even traditional marketing departments, have been focused around creating creative, the ideas, the creative. And then at some point, it's delivered to the customer. So the customer's out here, creative's in the center. this basically is the idea, in a lot of ways, is putting the customer center in the business, and everything radiates out from that. So you've done some stuff since then and around that. I mean, you've been a pioneer in terms of trying to understand ways to take that voice of the customer and innovate with technology when it comes to brand. What are some of the other things you guys have been doing, or you've tried, and you're going to be trying going forward?
Just one quick point before
Sure.
before that is what's so interesting is that we have a combination of functional leads as well as our agencies. And this is the first time, I was an ex-agency guy. This is the first time that, so we went to our meeting, which was the year wrap up, a year later, this was last year, but a year later, mission control and where have we gotten. And I saw agency folks stand around and say to each other, this is the best opportunity that we've ever had. I was like, wait, you guys are getting along? I don't even understand. But what was interesting is they said, now every single person knows what each other agency is doing, and other functional groups know what we're actually interacting in. So just a communication loop, which is beyond what we could have ever expected, that's being created there. But what that's allowing us to do is take the voice of the consumer and then directly drop that into creative in real time. So eventually, right now we have media buying in the room. So not only is this the first time it's really being done, are we going to now start buying media against real-time conversation? So the quality of the response is going to be massive because we're actually delivering on relevance. So I can see a conversation happening about training, and I can deliver either a conversation from a scientist or creative in real time. And I think that speaks to the fact that we are transitioning by putting the consumer at the center versus creative at the center, kind of what you said.
So you guys, the other thing about, speaking of consumers, you guys are a global company. You've got consumers across the world. You've got multiple cultures, multiple languages. How do you, as a multinational company, like how is that kind of brought into this whole, the listening aspect of things and maybe tuning different things in each different part of the world?
Yeah. So we have global listening across the globe. So what we're focused on now is what does it mean to be a borderless brand? So what does it mean, even beyond just listening, what does it mean to be able to have conversations across the globe? And I think, you guys are, and by the way, the work you're doing is amazing. But you guys are, you were talking to that, and that's, it's interesting because we just participated in Social Media Week, and we activated in 3 different countries, and that was a big test for us. Can we have a global PepsiCo? This is corporate, but can we have a global PepsiCo conversation in multi-language, and what does that mean? So that is, I think, the next big step is how do you start having global conversations across brands that are our size.
So
we listen right now,
right?
But we don't necessarily have a global conversation. So primarily because of language barriers, but also because we just haven't approached that.
Right. And do you think there's going to be some amazing insights that are going to come from that in terms of taking you guys to the next level and, from a competitive perspective, being able to really focus the messages, focus what the needs of what consumers are looking for, the associated brand attributes that you want to get at in terms of the different cultures?
Well, I think the vibrancy of the communities that we'll be able to cultivate and continue to connect will be huge. And I think that what's interesting is that what we are learning is that it's really about the same passion points. So a lot of the people are passionate about Pepsi, in India for the same reason that they're passionate about Pepsi in the US. So how do we continue to connect people around these passion points, which just grow their advocacy and their reason to believe in our brand?
So one of the things you talked about earlier, and I know a lot of people are familiar with Pepsi Refresh, and I know you've been, like, ever since I've known you, you've been a guy that try new things, learn from it, redeploy stuff constantly. Any thoughts on where you saw Pepsi Refresh and how it's kind of evolved, what you've learned from it, what you're going to be, how it helps the brand from that perspective?
Of course, no. Yeah, you're right. Learn, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Look. I love the Refresh program. I think it's massive. It's been a massive success. And I think, the biggest learning from Refresh is that if you align programs to people's passions, they will participate in ways that you've never seen.
Right.
So it's one thing that we had 87 million votes or 5 billion earned impressions, probably the largest social, if you want to consider it just that alone, program in the world. But the thing that drove me the most was I would be driving and see bumper stickers with people who created bumper stickers for their Refresh project. I had to turn my Google alerts off because the sheer amount of Google alerts that you see from it. And so I think that, again, it is, and the other thing that I think is interesting is is when you talk to people who participate in the project, whether they won or lost, if they were one of the 1,000 that actually went to vote, because it takes a lot to get people to vote, they will tell you amazing stories about the communities that they have created as a result of participating in the Refresh project. Whether they lost, even if they lost, those communities are still maybe activating the passion project that they brought to life. So, I think that is one of the biggest learnings, is that if we continue to align our brand to the passions of our consumers, then they'll participate.
So you're a guy that appreciates and has a really good eye for looking at new technology and trying new things. What are some of the things that you see coming forward, or ways that you evaluate some like new technologies, new platforms? So, for example, whether it's location-based stuff and how that kind of. What are some of the things you see coming down from the PepsiCo perspective?
Yeah, I think location. Location is huge. We launched a huge project with Foursquare. We were the first brand to launch a project with Foursquare, and then we launched a huge project with Foursquare and Hess and Brisk. We see volume increase in store. I think what's interesting about location is it changes your ability to have a loyalty relationship in store with your consumer, which is huge for us. But I think that there are companies that I think are going to be as dramatic to the space of social as you guys were to social. And I think influencer relationship management is probably the next big piece. So how do you stop throwing money down the drain by continuing to build groups of influence and keeping them in spreadsheets and forgetting about those folks? And how do you actually begin to cultivate the social publishers that care enough about your brand to share your message? And how do you create a platform that continues to engage them time after time and reward them and provide incentives and bring them back into your brand? And I think that right now we have, in a lot of respects, failed the folks that share our message right now. Because how many times, and I know there's a ton of people in here, where you've done an outreach program and you've never said thank you, or maybe you said thank you but you haven't said anything else to them. So how do you build those long-term relationships? And so I think that managing those relationships with social publishers is probably the next big thing. We know how to find them. We know how to hear what they're saying. We know what customers are saying about us. How do we actually cultivate real relationships with them over a long period of time?
So we know you really like the tech sector, because I know that's one of your passions. And if many of us probably have been to South by Southwest, you guys always have a presence. Last year, this year, the 2 years, I certainly remember a big presence. What's the kind of marriage between PepsiCo and technology, like in terms of that kind of, because you really love that tech sector. What is that, and where do you see it going?
Well, first, I love South by. South by, I think, is, it is the best. I call it the Davos of digital, because where else does every single mind in the tech sector go to one place and meet at one single time in the year? But what's even more interesting about South by Southwest is it is where you have a chance to see the technologies that are going to change the way you engage with your consumers for the next 6 to 12 months. And every technology that we talk about now or we use at some point either went through there, made it a milestone, or broke there. And so that is a huge opportunity for us. And what we do as an organization is we bring down droves of people, because, again, I'm big on, look, these are transformations that are happening to the entire organization. It's not just marketing and communications, but again, packaging, so on and so forth. So we bring almost 150 people, like a mini army, down to South by to participate in that. But what I think is interesting now is that because the rate of consumption of technologies is at a pace that we've never seen. So more apps have been downloaded from the App Store than songs from iTunes as of March. So if music was culture, digital clearly is culture now, right? And so that signals an opportunity for organizations like us to look at emerging technologies as a new way to engage with our consumers. And so we are very bullish on making sure that we're seeing what the technologies that are changing the landscape of our consumers. And if you just think about stuff like second screen, so most companies spend 80% of their marketing dollars on TV. Well, second screen is about to dramatically change, where you spend 80% of your marketing dollars. And I'll be sure that PepsiCo is going to understand how to use those technologies, what's down the pipeline, before they affect our business without us, before we're blindsided by it.
So just the second screen, the ability for people, a lot of us maybe on laptops, or using the iPads, or we'll be using playbooks, mobile devices, smartphones, that kind of thing, to share our thoughts, that kind of thing, as we're experiencing them, because we're experiencing things not always at our desktop. So from that perspective, you mentioned that it's more than just the marketing and PR side. It could be product development. Have you seen any, or are there any examples where you guys have been listening to the conversations out there and change packaging, come up with a new product, and